by layer, and there are some large molecules, we call that as protein. That functions as the transport for large and charged particles. Now those small and uncharged particles will just pass through this phospholipid bilayer. But for those charged particles like potassium, like sodium, they pass through these transport molecules and these large protein molecules because they are charged. Potassium is, we have positive 1, sodium, positive 1, and they pass through these large protein molecules. Okay? So, what else? Then of course, some other functions, the hormones. Now, many hormones are proteins. Among those are insulin. Are you familiar with insulin? Insulin is a protein that facilitates in the transport of sugar in the blood to the different cells in our bodies. Of course, the role of insulin there is to activate the glucose transporter. That's the role of insulin. It activates the glucose transporter. Say for example, if this is our glucose transporter, now we have here the insulin hormone. Say if this is our, so it binds there with the glucose transporter so that it would be opened up for the transport of glucose. So the glucose could get into the cell for its metabolism. Okay? So you have here insulin, then you have oxytocin. Oxytocin is another protein which, what's the function? So it, oxytocin is a hormone that stimulates the smooth muscle contraction in the uterine wall during delivery. So when you were born, what caused the expulsion? What causes your expulsion from your mommy's tummy, from mommy's womb? It's because of the stimulation of this oxytocin on the uterine wall, and of course the cervical and of course the vaginal canal. Smooth muscles, they are made up of smooth muscles. So that stimulates the contraction of the smooth muscles in the reproductive organ during delivery, especially the uterine wall, meaning the wall of the uterus. So that helps expels the baby out during delivery. And then of course you have the human growth hormone that made you grow taller. Taller or wider. So you have the primary, secondary growth implants. Okay, another we have protection. Proteins serve for protection. Now, like for example, blood clotting. Now, when we are wounded, say there is, so we happen si Bakulang, kami tag-accident, and say there are breakages on the, say, blood vessels, and the tendency is to continuous flow of blood. And if there is continuous flow of blood, there is tendency that you'll be running out of blood. So the response of our body is to produce more of this fibrinogen. Fibrinogen, which is of course produced by our thrombocytes. And of course, this fibrinogen would be converted into fibrin, an active form, to stimulate blood clotting. That is to prevent the continuous flow of blood. So that serves as the plug in the arteries, preventing thereby the continuous flow of blood. So in that way, the patient would be prevented from the running out of blood. So that's the purpose of blood clotting. And have that fibrinogen, an inactive form, which is converted into active form called fibrin. Okay. Then, body use, proteins called antibodies to fight disease. Antibodies are also protein by nature, which are produced by B cells. Now, that could only be produced when there are antigens of which our body is encountered. Okay? So, when there is antigen that gets inside our body, then there is a specific antigen that will be produced by our immune system, specifically our B cells. So, to fight against diseases. Another, you have storage. For storage, like casein in milk and of albumin in eggs. Okay? Where you could find, in what specific area of the egg where that albumin is present? Yolk or white? Albumin. Albumin or albumin. Albumin is the protein. It's a primary, say, structured protein, linear, which contains or present in the egg white. Of course, what's the role of that albumin? The role of albumin is to help or regulates as to how much water will be retained in the cells. Now, when we run out of albumin class, we tend to have edema. We tend to have edema. Kanang mamurot bitaw. Manghupong. So, that is what happened, class, because albumin there regulates as to how much water would be retained in the cells. If, of course, if we run out of this, especially when we grow older, where there is decreased production of this albumin, then we tend to swell. That is what happened. The water gets out, so there is no control anymore of water that will get out of the cell, and the cells will shrink, and of course they would go to the plasma. So that's what happened. And albumin is protein. So if you are, say, hypertensive class, and the doctor said that you avoid eating egg, you can still eat egg, but you remove the yolk. Just eat the white, because that contains protein, which is very, very important for water retention in the cell. Now, of course, it's very, very important as storage of nutrients for newborn infants. What are those nutrients present in there? Of course, mga RNAs are present there sa protein, sa egg white. Different RNAs. And, of course, mga proteins are very abundant there. Another, we have ferritin, a protein in the liver that stores the iron. Now, when you have cancers class, cancer, why is it that patients with cancer will decrease its hemoglobin content? So, mag-anemic. So, decrease in hemoglobin. Why? Because cancer cells will use mostly the iron present in our body. Because what happened to, say, when cells become cancerous, there is no control in their activities. And since they keep growing, that's why you have lump formation. And they tend to get the nutrients present in the cell, which are supposed to be for normal cells. So, together also with iron, which is very, very important for the cancer cells to grow rapidly. So they take up most of this iron. So of course, what the normal cells will be running out. So that's why there is decreased hemoglobin. So that is one symptom that you have cancer. You are suffering from cancer. Now another, you have regulation. Another role of protein is for regulation. Certain proteins not only control the expression of genes, but also control when gene expression takes place. Okay? Now during protein synthesis, so many proteins are necessary that regulate the synthesis or the expression of the DNA or the genes. So every time when gene is activated, it produces a certain protein. But before protein is produced, there are so many proteins which are needed to bind with the messenger RNAs, no? So that there would be translation, or it could be during transcription, during translation. So